Hi, everybody. Welcome, welcome. This is the Secrets of Tantra, and we are so excited to be with you tonight. Erwan and I are just back from New York. We had a fantastic time. Some of you live in New York, so you know it is so hot, like real summertime. I got to walk around like this till 10 p.m., which is just not the case in San Francisco usually, right? So we're so happy to have all of you here. Hello, Mastery of Relationship. We've missed you. So I'm Alicia Davon.
I'm Erwan Davon.
And for those of you, I love that, all the hands went woo at the same time.
Let's all wave, yay!
Woo!
Woo!
Oh, so good to see you guys.
That's great. It's like we're all five. You know?
I know, it is.
It's great to be 5 years old.
So for those of you that are new, this is a session of Mastery of Relationship, which is our weekly group coaching program. So there's a bunch of you that are here that are new visiting, and a bunch of you here that are in Mastery of Relationship. And how the night's going to go is I'll give you a sense of who we are and our backgrounds and how we came to be doing this work for those of you who are new. Then we're going to dive into a guided meditation to really get into our bodies, our vital center, our sexual center, our spiritual bodies, all of it. Then we'll continue to explore the secrets of Tantra. We'll take you through an exercise, and then we'll take some questions and some sharing. So some of you may have even come here with some questions. So make sure you write those down. You'll have a chance to ask them later. For those of you that are new, Erwan and I have an incredible opportunity for all of you that are interested in learning more about working with us. And in fact, some of you may have come here knowing you want to learn more about working with us. So in a little while, I'll tell you how you can do that. And we'll end about 9 o'clock. So I'm going to give you all a sense of us, like how we came to be here. I'm going to let someone in. Okay, good. So for the last 25 years, Erwan and I have supported over 12,000 singles and couples in unleashing your relationship potential. We have a ton of potential in that area, and our passion is supporting you in having the best romantic life and sexual life that you can have. So people come to us that want to learn how to get into their soulmate relationship, find their person, really find somebody that they're truly attracted to. And people come to us that are in relationship and want to juice it up and learn some skills to increase the chemistry. People come to us with kind of psychological blockages that manifest in relationships, sexual issues, all that stuff. We cover it. We have a method that we use to address all of your goals and challenges in romance and sex. So we're going to put a slide up here so you can see the 5 parts of our method, and I'm actually going to go through them. Good. Awesome. So as you can see on the screen, the first part of our method is consciousness, bringing awareness to our hidden psychological patterns that we have that are generally driving our romantic lives unbeknownst to us, right? So we bring some light to that first. Second part of the method is to make deep contact with yourself, truly who you are, which is a big part of tonight, by the way. The third part of our method is chemistry, unleashing the chemistry between the masculine and the feminine. The fourth part we call choreography, which is learning to dance through the stages of relationships skillfully, like being really, really good at that dating, flirting stage, but also being really, really good at commitment and communication and everything in between. And then finally, cultivation of your sexual potential, which is also related to tonight. So we don't want to leave out the sex when we're dealing with romance. All right. It's amazing that doesn't get left out.
How often that does, right? There's even a phrase for it, the honeymoon period, right? Relationships take off and then they sort of come down. And How can you have a relationship? If you're single, start one. If you're in a relationship, have one that keeps reaching new heights, even sexually. That's a big part of our passion. So I think we'll get into that tonight as well.
Yes. Let's hear a little bit about your background, baby. Where'd you come from?
As Alicia was describing the things that we support people with, psychological dysfunction, sexual this, sexual that, I was thinking that's my life history. That's why we're supporting people, folks, you all, with this kind of stuff, is because we've really been through that. My childhood was very difficult. My parents got divorced when I was very young. We immigrated from France. I don't have any memories of them together. I have maybe one memory of them at Arturo's Pizza. We just visited my dad in New York, so maybe they were both there. But, that's a sort of a summary of my family life. And then my mother left when I was 7, and she died shortly after that. And my father had a stroke, and he's still severely handicapped. And, really, no kidding, everybody else in the family died. So it went from dysfunction to worse. So I really needed support in relationship, even at the most basic level. I was in psychoanalysis for 5 years at the age of 15 to 20, multiple times per week. I saw a therapist when I was, I think, 8 years old, and went through about 10 years of therapy in my adult life, taught for the world's largest transformational organization after getting a degree in psychology, came out to California, did every kind of woo-woo, crazy Eastern spirituality, Western psychology, rebirthing, Tantra, anything I could possibly do until I was teaching for several of those organizations, including the world's biggest transformational organization. And at that point, I could hold a conversation. At that point, I could sort of function. But the place that I really wanted to function well, the place I was most turned on about, was relationships with women, was romantic relationships. So I started inquiring into that, investigating that, studying that, and I found out a secret. That everybody is really, really into romance and sex and passion, and people are just absolutely crazy about it. But some folks aren't doing much about it, right? So I took my whole life and just steered it in the direction of doing something about supporting people, supporting myself in having a romantic life or relationship life that was awake and juicy and sexy and turned on. And in that whole process, I really found a place where sex and spirit meet. And we're going to talk about that tonight. And we're not going to dumb it down. One thing I noticed about a lot of sort of Tantra things I found online and this kind of stuff is it's sort of like a dumbed down version of it. We're not going to dumb it down. We're going to go all the way to spirit, God, Buddha, being, whatever that is, the most invisible of the invisible, the depth, the essence. And we're going to go into the nitty gritty, the heart, the emotions, the sex, the orgasm, the full, we're going to cover the full spectrum. And that's really what Tantra is. So that's a little about me and a little about the topic.
Yes. And it was so, I'm remembering this moment. So Erwan and I, long story of how we met and got together, but we were dating. And then I was bugging him to let me visit the pleasure course, right? This course that he had created. He founded our organization 10 years before we met. So I go to this course, and it was I was getting my master's degree in psychology, right? So I was into the depth, and I was going to this holistic studies, transpersonal psychology school and the spirit, and it was all so good and very serious, and took the pleasure course. This just sealed the deal. At the end of the course, right, it was this few days we spent at this house and studying romance and sex and depth and psychology, all this stuff. Everybody was so turned on. And I remember one of the assistants in the course at the very end, turned up the radio really high, and everybody started dancing, and it was getting so hot, and people were taking their sweaters off, and it was whoa, here it is, the turn on and the fun that goes along with transformation. So that's why I have never left and never will.
And she's taken it over, right? So, that description, one of the words that I thought when Alicia was describing that is it's like getting high, right? But it's like getting high on life, right? Not on the substance, but on life, right? So let's just dive right into it. And let's start with some dancing music. Put some dancing music on for us. We're going to put some guided meditation music on, actually. That's our sort of code word for guided meditation, because we want our souls to dance, right? We really want to feel into those subtle places. So let yourself get super duper comfortable. Many of you are new, some of you in Mastery of Relationship. I want to give a special shout out to Jonathan and Jai, who are starting tonight. Hey.
Welcome. So good to have you guys.
Great to be with you. So get ultra comfortable, because for meditation you want to be nice and relaxed. But you also want to be upright. So let your spine be erect. You can imagine a string pulling the back of your skull up to the ceiling. Often when we sit, the chest tends to collapse. So kind of pull your chin back a little bit so the chest lifts. If you're leaning, you might need to put a pillow behind your middle back or something, so you got that nice chest lift, that nice sort of pigeon chest, that kind of barrel chest. And you'll notice if you do that, you feel kind of different. Maybe a little more open, maybe a little more vulnerable, maybe a little more sensitive. But pay attention to how that is. How is it for you to have your chest a little bit more open, a little bit more lifted? And this is very much what Tantra is about. Tantra is not going to some other world. That's what spirituality kind of was in the Indian tradition before Tantra came along. You kind of renounced the world. But Tantra is not a renunciate tradition. It's kind of a tradition that sort of took over Indian practice, although sometimes it's not called Tantra. But it really is. And Tantra is where you go into the world. In this case, into your heart. In this moment, into that lift of your chest. So you're not trying to get away from yourself or get to some heaven realm or some calm place or someplace else. You're opening to the actual sensation in your chest. Letting the breath slowly reach from the abdomen slowly up all the way to the top of the collarbones. Especially in the back of the body. In fact, you can even feel the breath begin lower than the chest. You can feel the breath begin in the abdomen or even all the way at the base of the torso, your sits bones, what we call the vital center, the genital center. You can feel your breath begin right at the base of your torso. The oxygen doesn't reach down there. But you can feel movement at the beginning of each inhalation, slowly rising all the way up to the collarbones, And each exhalation, the breath is released. And you're focused, you're concentrated on that breath. And you'll notice that the more concentrated and still and focused you are, the deeper your experience goes, the more sensitive you become. And you enter what we could call the subtle body. In classical Indian terms, we would call it the pranic body, prana, energy, the energy body, the subtle body. It's kind of like if you were at one of those new age expos and they took a picture of you with the aura camera. You know, it kind of looks like a sort of cloud in and around your body. And this is a very important part of ourselves for tantric practice, your subtle body. But it does take stillness and concentration. And most importantly, acknowledgement of what you're sensing. Maybe it feels like tingling or buzzing or fullness or emptiness. So let yourself really notice that and really acknowledge whatever the sensation is for you. It's going to have some physical components. It's going to have some energetic components. Probably has some emotion in it. And make sure you don't control any of that. So you're just receptive to your subtle body. And you'll notice that your subtle body is alive. It's moving, it's morphing, it's shifting, it's changing. One minute it feels more physical, another minute more energetic, another minute more emotional, another minute more spiritual. So you're going inwards. You're combining the world that you can see, the manifest world, the outer world, with the inner world. And what I'd like you to do now is very gently, and I really mean gently as possible, just let your breath increase so that your breath is a little bit deeper and a little bit slower. Just a little bit deeper, a little bit slower. You're not forcing it, you're not pushing it around, but you're very gentle with it. And on the inhalation, let your breath reach all the way to the collarbones, kind of with that lift of the chest. Maybe lift your chest a little bit more. And on the exhalation, let yourself keep that lift. Let yourself keep the chest lifted, even when you exhale. And you'll notice you feel more. One of the things you might feel is you might feel excited, or you might feel nervous, or you might feel sad. You're really open to whatever it is. But if we feel really deeply into our hearts, inevitably there's a sadness which surfaces. We call it the heart wound. And that's really from all the losses in our life, especially the loss of contact with spirit, or a higher power, or God, or self with a capital S. So I'm not saying that's surfacing for you, but if it does, it's fine. It's a very important part sort of grieving and releasing, and the sadness that goes along with that. That's a very important part of the tantric approach. We're not killing off the ego. You might have heard that expression in some spiritual circles, to kill the ego. We're not doing that. We're really feeling our way through. We're trusting what's there. That wound can feel like the sand of life, or the sand of youth slipping through your fingers. It can have a poignant feeling. And sometimes it can cause a type of gripping, or maybe there's fear for you and it causes a type of gripping, or maybe it's hard to even settle down. And there's so much gripping that it's hard to be still. That's okay. But just notice that gripping, psychic, emotional, even physical. Maybe certain parts of your body are a little tight. And just notice what's around that gripping, or that clenching, or that fear, or that sadness, or whatever the experience is for you. Notice the space. Maybe the space around the gripping, it feels like emptiness. So just notice any psychological structures, emotions, all that kind of stuff. You got all the room in the world for it. You're still with it. You're open to it. You're feeling it in a heartfelt way. But you're also noticing the space around all of that. The emptiness, so to speak. And if it feels okay, dip your toe into that emptiness. Reach your hand into that emptiness. Really let yourself feel that emptiness, that spaciousness. It might have a color, it might be black, or it might be clear. It might feel infinite, or it might feel like it has depth. It might be very, very pleasurable and spacious, or it might feel somehow deficient or vacant. And as you're feeling with that kind of depth, subtlety of feeling, really feel that emptiness in your body. Let your breath reach all the way from the pelvic bowl, all the way up through the collarbones, so that this subtle dimension, this emptiness, this openness, is actually felt in your body. This is a big part of Tantra. We don't go away from the body. We don't go away from the heart or the wounds or the past or the memories or the issues. We feel through them, into them. We're only going to meditate for about another minute. So what I'd like you to do for this last minute is really concentrate. See if you can really, really focus on your felt sense in your chest, in your torso, noticing each breath. If thoughts come, let them go. Now, as we transition into the topic proper, right away from the guided meditation, see if you can sort of stay with the meditation, stay in that meditative state, which is really just a state of openness, sensitivity, acceptance, relative stillness. Fine to adjust your posture, obviously. But see if you can not go back to the kind of rapid fidgeting or distraction or thinking about, work or the laundry or anything. Really staying concentrated. Concentration is a very big part of all spiritual practice, including Tantra. And in Tantra, we don't just concentrate and focus on the absolute or spirit or God or something like that. We actually focus on what your experience is in the moment. You're concentrated on your experience, physical, emotional, energetic, all of it, all the way through to what's invisible, what's most subtle. So it has a very healing kind of quality to it, right? It's very accepting, it's very embracing. And there's a lot of energy in all of that, right? In your emotions, in parts that are normally sort of cut off. We might repress an emotion, or we might, deny our sex drive or sexual interest, or, there's a lot of parts of ourselves that people sort of cut off in the name of spiritual practice. And from a tantric viewpoint, that's a mistake. Those emotional issues are filled with life. They're filled with emotional charge. They're filled with energy. So we want to recoup that. The sex is filled with energy. It's how life creates more life. We want that energy. We want to enjoy that. We want to feel that. We're not trying to get away from it. We're going to show you a little cartoon and then a little video clip that expresses this well. I just saw this in a movie a couple of days ago. All of those are the different evolutionary stages that we've been through as human beings, from amoebas to fish to salamanders to, I don't know if we were dinosaurs, but to cavemen and so on. And you can probably read it. What the man is saying is, I'd like to thank all those who made it possible for me to be here today. And this is a very tantric viewpoint. There's our issues and our egos, and it's all part of how we landed here. It's all equally beautiful. And from a tantric perspective, a rose bud is not less beautiful than a fully blossomed rose. In fact, really appreciating a rosebud helps the rose blossom, appreciating ourselves where we are, as opposed to trying to be some other way. All right, so a tantric approach is very inclusive. It includes all parts of ourselves, including our sex center, and we're going to get to that. But I want to cover the inclusiveness first. So we're going to show you a 2-minute clip from that movie, sort of similar to the cartoon that we just showed you. And the name of the movie, let me see if I can get the name of the movie right. I think it's Don't Worry, He Won't Get There on Foot. Mm-hmm. And it's about the cartoonist who drew that cartoon, who is paralyzed from the neck down, has some limited use of his hand. Very moving movie. And this is, you might want to, if you want to watch the movie, you might not want to watch this part, because it's kind of towards the end of the movie. But it really beautifully and poignantly captures that inclusive element that's central to Tantra.
I'd like to thank all those who made it possible for me to be here tonight. I feel stimulated, magical. At night I seem to think more clearly. I work hard, but it doesn't feel like work to me. The intellectual clutter of the daytime hours dissolves from my mind, which moves in an almost instinctual animal way. I'm happy. I don't care that the job or the welfare office is giving me gray hairs, because ideas and images are flowing through me and onto the paper. I'd like to thank all those who made it possible for me to be here tonight. Because if it weren't for you, I don't think I would have made it.
All right, we have to unmute ourselves here.
Wow. Oh, my Lord. See the movie.
It's a great movie. I recommend it. In Master of Relationship, we often recommend movies. I would recommend that one. So this is the tantric approach, which is really an all-embracing approach, including the sort of lower parts of ourselves, or our egos, or the more stuck parts of ourselves, or the parts that are excluded, right? Like sex is often excluded in a lot of spiritual practice, not in a tantric approach, right? And Tantra was designed as it was sort of a revolution in Indian from India, the spirituality of India went through kind of a revolution in the last 1500 years or so, and it went away from a very renunciate tradition and towards a tradition it was much more tantric. Yoga is very tantric, right? Going into the body and the breathing practices and all of that. They didn't really have in-depth psychology like Western psychology, but that could be considered a type of tantra. Sexual practice was part of Indian tantra, so it was very revolutionary. It was very embracing, and it was thought to be a teaching for the, get ready for this, the Kali Yuga, the dark time. Okay, so we'll get a little. I don't know, this would be good for, what are those YouTube things all about, like Atlantis and, conspiracy theories and all the rest of this. So there's no conspiracy theory in this, but the Indian tradition had phases of time. Optimal time for many thousands of years, and an okay time, and a really dark time. The dark time was called the Kali Yuga, and sorry folks, according to Indian tradition, we are in that dark time. So, whether you believe that or not, it really doesn't matter. But Tantra was designed for when things are really difficult. And you couldn't just kind of go off to the wilderness and, forget the world and just really be blissed out in your meditation, because you were dealing with war. Or you had a family and you were a householder and you had to bring up children, right? Or your work, you were really involved in that. You couldn't, renouncing life just really didn't work. So the spirituality shifted to really embracing life. And again, it included embracing sexuality, which was, spiritually a big no-no, especially in the Indian tradition. Now, I don't know about you, but like a lot of the stuff going on nowadays is pretty Kali Yuga-ish, some of it's pretty darn scary, right? So I think it's a very useful practice, and most of us are householders. There's probably nobody here who's living off in a Zen monastery. I did live in a Zen monastery for a while. There's probably nobody here living in an ashram. I did live in an ashram for a while. You can kind of get away from the world in those places, but most of us are really in the world. Alicia and I have a 5-year-old. We love him. I'm not about to renounce my family or my wife or my sex life or the joy that I have working with you like that, right? So Tantra is an in the world, in life kind of practice. Now, that can be challenging because it really involves feeling whatever losses or sadness there might be for you, or incompletions from the past, or issues or triggers you have around intimacy and romance. So just take a moment, take a breath, and just let yourself feel whatever's there for you in your life that might have somehow been kind of repressed or excluded in some way. Something from the past that you didn't quite feel through or metabolize. or some part of yourself, that you've been kind of shying away from, your social drive, your sexual drive, your love of people, some part that's been kind of sort of put on hold. And just take a moment, breathe into all of that, whatever is there for you, whether you understand it or don't understand it. You're just open to it, right? All the taps are open. The gates are open. Tantra is a very open practice, very non-controlling. You might notice the session tonight is just going where it's going. Now, one place we want it to go, that I certainly wanted it to go when I started this journey almost 25 years ago, is I wanted my life to really be a full, turned-on, sexy, juicy life that had great romance. I'm going to curse for a minute. I didn't know my ass from the hole in the ground about romance. I really didn't. So I took kind of a volume approach. I just made an offer to a woman every day, tolerated an enormous amount of rejection. But, after a couple of years of that, I really started to learn what I was doing. And lo and behold, ended up with the most attractive woman in the world. So it turned out.
Yeah, I have to share this because he was so good with me. I had burned out relationship after relationship after relationship, and it all happened in the same moment. I would get a little scared about something, and then I would blow the guy off, right, in my funny, silent way. He handled that so well. We were at this workshop. We had already met before, and then we saw each other at this workshop, right? I was really turned on to Erwan and really letting him know and making eyes at him and this and that. And in the end, he came up to me and said, "Hey, great to meet you. Let's get coffee back in the city." And then I did my thing. I was like, I don't know. And he's like, "Oh, okay, well, when you're ready, you call me." And then he split. I'm like, what? That got me. Those skills that he built are a huge part of why we're together.
And I'll tell you my secret. My secret was not having it all together, right? My secret was the secret of Tantra. So we were just in New York, so I'm going to speak New York for a moment. Please forgive me. My secret was just to be as fucked up as I am. And the realness, that when you're just how you are, the truth shines through. And that's the tantric secret, to be right where you are, consciously, totally, completely. And there's something about that you feel good, and people are drawn to you, and terrible issues of doubt and fear and shame are kind of interesting, and they build character, and people like them, and they're kind of funny, and you can kind of handle it because it's all bathed in consciousness. It's all bathed in truth. Nobody's left out. Nothing is left out. In my case, not even me. Right? In your case, not even you. Now, sex is a big thing that gets left out for people because it's really, really triggering. So what I'd like to do now, instead of talking about it, let's practice. I'd like you to breathe in a way where you're really breathing into your pelvic center, so that we're not talking about sexual practice, you're actually doing it. You're actually including that part of yourself. And it doesn't need to be any particular way. You don't need to be turned on or turned off, or, have a 6 foot long penis. I have a 6 foot long penis, but no one else does, right? You don't need, any of that. You just get to be exactly how you are, right? So just let yourself breathe into that part of yourself. Really include that, really feel that. And notice that it does take some concentration, because it's very easy to bounce away from the sex center. All of a sudden, the laundry becomes more interesting, or you space out, or whatever. or there's some judgment, I should be feeling this, or I should be feeling that, or he should be saying this, or we should be doing that. It's very easy to bounce away from it. But see if you can just kind of stay with that part of yourself. Your sexual self, your body, any sexual issues that come up. Your sexual self in a non-physical way, right? Sex is how being creates more beings, how life creates more life. Just really welcoming that part of yourself back to the table. And as Tantra says, it doesn't need to be any particular way. You could be 88, you could be 18. You could be turned on, you could be turned off. It could feel numb down there, or it could feel tingly. And what you may notice is that it's not just a sexual center, it's also a vital center. We, in fact, call it the vital center. When that part of ourselves is excluded, we don't just lose sexuality, we lose vitality. We lose being turned on to life. So tantric sex is not just about sex, it is about sex, but it's also about being turned on to life, the specifics of life. Your job, your family, your kids, your hobbies, your relationship partner, your eyes, your ears, your feet. It's really got that kind of like vital, zesty energy. And see if you can just feel that part of yourself. And now what I'm going to ask you to do is to maintain that contact with your vital center, however it feels, hot, cold, whatever. And then also include your heart, your physical heart, right? Your physical heart, your emotional heart. So you're feeling both your vital center and your heart center simultaneously. This is a very important part of Tantra, because a lot of times we're feeling sexy, but we keep our heart out of it. Or we're feeling intimate and heartfelt and full of love, but we keep our sex center out of it. So here we are, about, I don't know, 75, 80 people, and you're, 90 people, great. And you're feeling your heart and your vital center. And we're all doing it together. Most of you are with your partner or alone. So it's a very safe, it's very challenging. There's a lot of people who have sex easily, or a lot of people who feel their hearts easily, but not a lot of people who can feel both at the same time. So this is a nice, safe, relatively easy time to do it. No time like the present. And what I'd like you to do next is take your left hand and put it on your heart. Nice kind of gentle touch there, relaxed hand. And then with your right hand, I'd like you to put your right hand on your abdomen, right between your belly button and your genitals. So it's not on your genitals and it's not on your belly button. It's kind of right in between. If you went in from there, a woman's ovaries would be there. And even for a man, although the testicles are a few inches below that, it's still a good contact place for that whole pelvic energy. And just see what it's like for you to include both parts of yourself in a nice, easy, safe way. And to let your breath reach your right hand and your left hand. So your heart's included, your belly's included, your sex center's included, your issues are included, your spirit and true nature is included. And one thing we can feel and sense right now that you may be feeling and sensing is that you are absolutely perfect exactly how you are. Truly beautiful. You don't need to go someplace or lose some weight or get younger or any of that kind of stuff. Even the issues, we can really be thankful for all the things and all the people who helped us get here today, including the difficulties. But we're not going to leave out the sex, which had a big part. Our parents having sex had a big part in us getting here today. That spiritual traditions exclude sex is a little bit strange when you think about it. Maybe it's the most sacred of the sacred. But that also means the most tender of the tender. Now very slowly and gently, please just release your hands and pick up your pad and paper. We're going to transition into a writing exercise. And the first thing we'd like you to write is, where in your life have you been experiencing your heart but not your sex center? Like you've been, that's been shut down. Maybe you're in a romantic relationship, but you've been shutting off the sex center. That's not uncommon. Most people end up doing that. No shame in that. But you've been feeling your heart. You love the person, but the turn-on's kind of gone. Or, maybe at work, right? You love your coworkers. But like anytime you start to feel a little turned on, no, that's not okay. You shut that down. So just take a moment and do a little journal writing about places in your life where you're feeling your heart, but the sex center is being shut down or off limits. And again, in romantic relationship, that's kind of one of the best places to note, because for most people, that becomes the case. It's good to see that, so you can transcend it. And you don't need to do anything about that. You don't need to change it. Let spirit change. Another part of the tantric approach is God does all the work. Let Buddha deal with it. You just have to notice it. You just have to show up. You just have to sense it, feel it, acknowledge it. You can include some of your past if you'd like. You can draw pictures of you if you'd like. Just do it any way that feels good to you. Where in your life has your heart been allowed, but sex has been shut down? And then whenever you're complete with that, you can transition to the opposite. Where in your life have you been feeling turned on and sexy, or that's been allowed, but you don't feel your heart? Right? Maybe you go to sex parties and it's really sexy, but you don't really feel connected to the people. Or maybe even with your partner, you have wild sex, but not so much with the heart. Pornography is prevalent nowadays. Maybe sometimes when you watch pornography, there's a lot of sexual feeling, but there's no heart feeling. So places in the present or the past where the vital center, the sex center, has been allowed, but not the heart. Makes me think of a lot on the internet. There's a lot of kind of pickup, how to pick somebody up kind of stuff. And some of it's actually pretty good, but most of it doesn't really, there's not much love in it. And again, you don't need to do anything about it. You just get to see it and feel it and understand it. Just like you can't heal a cut on your hand. Life does that, or God or being or spirit or whatever word you like. You don't need to do anything about it. You just need to feel it and sense it and understand it. And there's a natural healing that takes place when things are in consciousness. And to complete this exercise, take your time with the writing, but whenever you're done with the writing, I'd like you to slowly bring your hands back to your heart and lower abdomen between the genital center and the belly button. And just feel what it's like when those two are felt together. Just feel what it's like when those two are felt together. And even let yourself visualize. Tantric practices have a lot of visualization, especially the Tibetan tantric practices. We've been talking about the Hindu or the Indian ones. But let yourself visualize a relationship with somebody, maybe your current partner, maybe a partner in the future, where your heart and your sex center are both completely included. When you're out to dinner, it's okay to not only love them, but feel turned on. When you're in bed, it's okay to not just feel turned on, but feel your heart. And just let that picture be as vivid and specific as possible. Okay, good. And then slowly let your hands drop and let yourself stay in that, not only that open space, because, sometimes we talk about being open, and for human beings, everything kind of turns into like a mental something. So we don't mean just like open in your head. Let yourself stay open in your heart and your body and your vital center. So you're just kind of acclimating to that openness, right? That sensitivity in all your parts, right? This is very important for what Alicia and I call an eternal date, or a date that's in spirit and really juicy and sexy and gets better as time goes on, gets more and more turned on. We've been together since 2003. Yeah. So we've been together for 18 years. So she's my old lady, right? I'm her old man, right? And the sex and the turn on is better now than it's ever been. And if somebody who's as wacko and has as many issues as me can do that, anybody can do that. We can all have that. But it does take this very deep feeling, right? This real inclusiveness. And if you're going to do it with a partner, inclusiveness, not just of yourself and your sex center and your issues and all that, but also the other person's. So that's what Tantra is. That's the secret of Tantra. Now, what Tantra is not, what Tantra is often mistaken to be, is anything goes, right? There's some people who kind of teach Tantra as like kind of a, anything goes kind of extreme kind of practice. And, of course, there's some attraction to that. Oh, great, I can do whatever I want. I can eat, it's all about the sensual, and like, I can just have sex with anybody and like eat 2 pints of Ben & Jerry's and all the rest of it. I'm not morally judging that, but it's not Tantra and it's not spirit, because it's not conscious. When we're conscious, you eat until your body doesn't want to eat anymore, right? Which is usually before 2 pints of Ben & Jerry's, right? Or if you're having sex with somebody and you're conscious, you want to be connected to them, right? Heart connected to them, right? Sexually connected to them, bodily, physically connected to them, psychically connected to them. So Tantra is not anything goes. That's more like acting out or unconsciousness. And again, we're not morally judging it, but it's not that. There was a time period where I thought it was that because I wanted it to be that, because I wanted to eat 2 pints of Ben & Jerry's, right?
Have it all be holy.
Right, and it's all holy and it's all great, but that's not really actually the case. You might have gone through a few of those phases yourself. Don't judge yourself for it. Just learn from it, okay? Tantra is a very deep spiritual practice. In some ways, a very challenging spiritual practice because, all this feeling takes a lot of concentration and is kind of intense. But the rewards are great. You don't only end up in heaven and timelessness and the infinite and the invisible, but you also do get to eat a piece of chocolate or have an extended orgasm or have a family and, the stuff of life is known to be what it really is. Whatever you want to call that, right? Spirit or God or, like that. So I think Just say another couple of things quickly, and then we're going to head towards your questions because we want to do as much dialogue as possible. I want to say a quick word about desire. In Tantra, desire is good. In most spiritual traditions, desire is kind of frowned upon. So let me say a little bit about desire. If desire goes through your ego structure, your ego identity, your ego structure, your issues, your psychology, then it ends up as a kind of craven state, and you're wanting and you're never satisfied, and you got that pint of Ben & Jerry's and you're already looking to the next one, or you're in a relationship and you're already heading into the next one, or it's not quite good enough. It's this kind of sort of craven state. So that's what happens to desire when it moves through ego structures. And if we include those ego structures and we feel through them, then desire is kind of unbound. It's not frustrating. It's not limited. It's more like love. It's more like interest. Right? You might be hopefully you are. You might be very interested in what we're saying. Wow, it's interesting. Wow. We're very interested in you. Right? So it's there's desire, there's lust, there's love. Maybe not lust. Lust might be the wrong word. There's liking, there's love, there's, you're turned on, it's juicy, but it's not craven. Right? It doesn't have that frustrating kind of quality to it. So I want to say a little bit about desire because people often don't know what to do with desire. In Tantra, it's fine to have desire. Every time you're hungry, you have desire. Every time you're turned on, you have desire. But you do want to include and feel through your issues, what we call your relationship blueprint, deeply enough that the desire doesn't turn into hell, right? Or ill health, or all the ways that that can go. So, anything you want to say about presence? Really attracting a partner. I've been sort of over talking, and why don't you say whatever you want to say? I'll shut up for a while, and then we'll go to questions.
Right. Well, presence is your biggest asset in all the goals that you have for relationships. So, in attracting a partner, right? Like I remember this. I think it was on YouTube. This meme, this like popular video that was going around a few years ago. And it showed this like sliding doors moment, right? Like this, like what would have happened in one scenario versus another in this guy's life if one little detail was changed, okay? So the first one shows him and he's standing on a street corner and he's got his phone. And he's on his phone and he's looking at it. And then this gorgeous woman walks by and she just walks by him, goes about her business. That's it. Then it flashes to the same guy on the same corner with his phone in his pocket, and he's just there. And you can feel his presence. He's standing on the street corner, and she walks by, and they lock eyes. And then, what happens next is they live happily ever after, right? There's these scenes of them dating and getting married and having children, and that presence, that attention, think about it. Those of you that are single, if you pay even more attention to the people around you, it enhances your ability to attract a partner, right? And then in relationship, presence certainly helps. There was this moment, so Erwan and I, many of you know this, those of you who are in mastery of relationship, and we've been talking about it tonight. We were just in New York City. And it was Erwan, me, and our 5-year-old in this tiny little Airbnb. It was like this super stylish in the West Village Airbnb. And there we are. And we came in from the day and we're hot and we took cold showers. And then Aiden was like really wanting to watch this dinosaur video, right? So I put it on for him in the other room. And I was like busy doing stuff, cleaning up, whatever. And Erwan lies on the bed and he's like, looks like Aiden's pretty into that video, like we could have some private time. And like I wasn't present in that moment, did not catch on. I'm like, I don't even really need private time. I just cleaned up everything I need to clean up. Let's go out for ice cream. I'm ready. And then Erwan just was like, he's like, no, I mean private time. And I look at him and our eyes lock and he was like, his presence was just penetrating me. I'm like, oh, yes, private time. We locked the door and had some private time. So that was really great. Often we wonder what to do with all of those things that distract us from being present, right? Like technology and distractions and modern day busyness and doing a million things. I was working with a couple the other night, this couple I've been working with for like 2 years, nobody here. And I get on the Zoom with them and I'm like, hey, how you guys doing? And he says, we just got back from vacation. I'm exhausted. I'm like, what do you mean you're exhausted? You just got back from vacation. He said, no, when you get back from vacation, then you get to work and there's all the work you didn't do while you were on vacation. You may as well not have gone on vacation. So he was all stressed out, right? Many of you maybe can relate to that never-ending to-do list. So we worked through some stuff and then I guided them in these touching practices, which we teach all of our students. We should actually put on this image here. You can see what I mean by touching practices. You can see the upper left, Erwan is doing deep touch on me. This is an example of a touching practice, right? And at the end, and they both sat up and he's like, I got my vacation back. My point is the antidote to all of that busyness and distraction is practice, sensual practice, physical practice, meditation, and literally scheduling it into your day, right? Here's some examples of that. Here's some movement, some body practice. Here's what we call psychological inquiry, which you can do with yourself in a journal or with somebody else, really talking through what's going on with you psychologically, feeling that in your body. And then, a little bit of sensual practice here. Does not have to be limited to deep touch. You can go all the way sexual. So those are examples of practices that help bring presence and turn on into your relationship life.
And this is